The rain poured down on the Chicago streets as I locked eyes with a stranger who had just pulled me back from the path of a speeding truck. In that moment, I had no idea that falling for him would force me to confront the secret I'd hidden from everyone, including myself. My heart hammered against my ribs, not just from a near miss, but from the way his hand stayed on my arm a second longer than necessary, steady and warm despite the cold downpour. "You okay, man?" he asked, his voice calm, but carrying a hint of concern that felt oddly personal. I nodded, wiping water from my eyes, try to play it cool, even as my knees felt weak. "Yeah, thanks. That was close." He smiled, a genuine curve of his lips that reached his blue eyes, and something inside me shifted, like a door cracking open after years of being bolted shut. We stood there under the awning of a nearby cafe as the storm raged on, exchanging names. His was Liam Bennett, a freelance photographer who'd been shooting street scenes when he spotted me stepping off the curb without looking. I told him mine, Alex Rivera, a 30-year-old graphic designer at a mid-sized firm downtown. Small talk turned easy, the kind that didn't feel forced. He asked about my day, and I found myself admitting the argument I'd just had with my parents over the phone, how they kept pushing me to settle down with a nice girl back home in the suburbs. Liam listened without judgment, nodding like he understood more than he let on. Before I knew it, we ducked inside for coffee, the steam rising between us as we talked about everything and nothing, Chicago's unpredictable weather, the best hidden parks, the way the city could make you feel both alive and invisible at the same time. By the time the rain eased, I felt lighter than I had in months. We exchanged numbers, promising to grab lunch sometime. As I walked home, my soaked shoes squelching, I replayed the moment his hand had steadied me. It wasn't just gratitude. It was the spark of something deeper, something I'd spent years burying under deadlines and family expectations. That night, alone in my apartment, I stared at my phone, debating whether to text him first. The internal battle raged. Part of me wanted to pretend it was nothing, just a random act of kindness. The other part, the one-eyed silence for so long, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this stranger had seen the real me in those few minutes. I typed a quick thank you message and hit send before I could overthink it. His reply came almost instantly. "Anytime. Looking forward to that lunch. Take care, Alex." A simple response, but it made my chest tighten with a mix of fear and excitement I couldn't name yet. The next few days blurred into a routine laced with anticipation. Work kept me busy with client revisions and tight deadlines, but my mind kept drifting to Liam. We texted casually at first, sharing photos of the city, funny memes about rainy commutes. Then came the invitation for coffee near the lakefront. I almost canceled twice, telling myself it was just friendly, nothing more. But when I saw him waiting on the bench, camera slung over his shoulder, hair tousled by the breeze, that same pull hit me again. We walked the path, talking about our lives. He shared stories of traveling for shoots, the freedom of capturing moments others missed. I opened up a little about growing up in a tight-knit family where tradition ruled, and any deviation felt like betrayal. He didn't push, just listened, his presence steady like an anchor in the storm of my thoughts. As the weeks passed, our meetings became regular. A lunch here, a gallery opening there. Each time, the conversations deepened. I found myself laughing more, sharing vulnerabilities I'd never voiced aloud. Liam had this way of making the world feel less heavy, like it was okay to question the path I'd been forced onto. One evening, after a particularly draining call with my mom about attending a family reunion and finally meeting someone special, I met Liam at a quiet bar. Over craft beers, I let slip how exhausting it was to keep up appearances. He reached across the table, briefly squeezing my hand. "You don't have to carry that alone, you know." The touch lingered in my mind long after, stirring feelings I'd denied for years. Was this friendship or something more? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but for the first time, I didn't want to run from it. I wanted to explore it, even if it terrified me. Back at work the following Monday, the usual office chatter about weekend plans felt distant. My colleague Sarah noticed my distraction and teased me about a new girlfriend. I forced a laugh, the lie tasting bitter. Inside, the conflict built. How could I explain that the person occupying my thoughts was a man I'd met by chance? One whose smile made me question everything my family had drilled into me about what a real man should want? That night, pacing my living room, I replayed our last conversation. Liam had asked about my dreams beyond design work, and I'd admitted wanting to travel, to live without the weight of expectations. His response had been simple yet profound. Then why not start now? Those words echoed, chipping away at the walls I'd built. As I finally drifted to sleep, I realized the stranger who'd saved me wasn't just changing my day. He was quietly reshaping my entire sense of self. The journey ahead felt both inevitable and impossible, but for once, I didn't want to turn back. Lunch with Liam the next weekend turned into an all-day adventure. We rented bikes along the lakefront trail, the sun breaking through clouds as we pedaled side by side. Wind whipped at our jackets while we talked about childhood memories. Mine filled with strict Sunday dinners and church picnics where fitting in meant never standing out. Liam shared his own stories of moving around as a kid with his single mom, finding solace in photography as a way to capture beauty in chaos. There was no pressure, no agenda, just two guys connecting on a level that felt rare and precious. When we stopped for ice cream, he teased me about my terrible balance on the bike, and I shot back with a playful shove. The laughter came easy, natural like breathing. But as the afternoon stretched, so did the internal tug-of-war. My phone buzzed with a text from my dad reminding me about the upcoming family reunion and hinting at a nice girl from church he'd like me to meet. The guilt hit hard. Here I was, enjoying the company of a man who made me feel alive while lying to the people who raised me. Liam noticed my sudden quiet and asked gently if everything was okay. I hesitated, then opened up about the pressure, how coming from a traditional background made even thinking about my own happiness feel selfish. He didn't offer advice or pity. Instead, he said, "Family's complicated, but so is denying who you are. You deserve space to figure it out." His words stayed with me, planting seeds of possibility I hadn't dared water before. Work the following week brought its own challenges. A big presentation loomed, and my boss made offhand comments about settling down to focus better. I smiled through it, but the weight pressed heavier. During a late-night editing session, I texted Liam a quick vent. His reply was instant. A photo of the skyline at dusk with the caption, "Take a break and look up. The city's still here for you." It was small, but it grounded me. We met for a quick dinner after, where conversation flowed into deeper territory. I told him about my college years, the confusion I'd pushed down, the dates with girls that never felt right. He listened with those steady blue eyes, sharing in return about his own path to accepting himself years ago. No drama, no judgment, just honesty that made my chest loosen. The first real test came when my parents announced a surprise visit to Chicago for a weekend. Panic set in. I cleaned the apartment frantically, hiding any trace of my growing connection with Liam. When they arrived, the questions started immediately. Job, dating life, future plans. Mom hugged me tight, whispering about grandkids one day. Dad clapped my shoulder, proud but expectant. I deflected as best I could, taking them to tourist spots and avoiding any mention of my new friend. But Liam texted during their visit, asking if I was free for a walk. I replied vaguely, heart racing at the secrecy. That evening, alone after dropping them at their hotel, I met him at the park. The relief of seeing him washed over me like a wave. We sat on a bench, shoulders brushing, and I confessed how exhausting the performance was. He placed a hand on my knee briefly, reassuring. "You're doing your best. That's enough for now." As the visit ended and my parents drove away, waving with promises of more calls, the relief mixed with shame. I'd hidden Liam like a secret shame, yet spending time with him felt more authentic than anything in years. Our next meeting stretched into hours of talking about dreams and fears. I admitted the growing attraction, how his presence made me question the life I'd been building. Liam didn't push for labels. He simply said, "Whatever this is, I'm here for it." That night, walking home under streetlights, I felt the shift. The stranger had become a lifeline, pulling me toward a version of myself I'd long ignored. Family calls the next day brought fresh guilt, but the spark with Liam burned brighter, promising growth I couldn't yet fully grasp. The emotional tide was rising, and I was learning to swim instead of drown. The weeks blurred as our bond deepened. Liam invited me to one of his photo exhibits at a small gallery downtown, and I showed up nervous but excited. Surrounded by his black and white captures of city life, I saw the world through his eyes, raw and beautiful. We lingered over coffee afterward, discussing art and life. I opened up more about the isolation of hiding my truth, the way it chipped away at my confidence at work and with friends. Liam shared his own past struggles, how coming out had cost him some relationships but gained him freedom. His vulnerability mirrored mine, creating a safe space I'd never known. When he suggested a weekend hike outside the city, I agreed without hesitation, eager for more time away from the pressures mounting at home. The hike proved transformative. Trails wound through sun-dappled woods, birds calling overhead as we talked nonstop. I confessed the fear of disappointing my parents, the way their expectations shaped every decision. Liam listened, then shared stories of his supportive but distant mom, how he'd had to forge his own path. We paused at a lookout, the city skyline faint in the distance, and he turned to me. "You don't have to choose between them and you, Alex. There's room for both if you're honest." His words hit deep, stirring courage I didn't know I had. On the drive back, our hands brushed accidentally, sending a jolt through me. I didn't pull away. That small moment felt like a turning point, a quiet acknowledgement of the feelings growing between us. Back in the city, life tested the budding connection. At work, a team-building event forced conversations about personal lives. Colleagues shared stories of wives and kids, and when eyes turned to me, I mumbled something vague about focusing on career. The isolation stung, but texting Liam afterward brought relief. He met me for drinks, his presence a balm. We laughed about office politics, but the conversation turned serious when I admitted considering telling a close friend at work. Liam encouraged me gently, no pressure, just support. The next day, I took the leap with my buddy Mike over lunch. His response was warm and accepting, a weight lifting that I hadn't realized was crushing me. "Dude, I've suspected." "Good for you," he said. It was a small victory, but it fueled my confidence. Family calls intensified around the reunion planning. Mom sent photos of potential matches from church, her messages laced with hope. I dodged as best I could, but the guilt festered. Meeting Liam that evening, I poured it out. He held space for my frustration, then suggested we grab dinner at a quiet spot. Over pasta, he opened up about his own family dynamics, the sacrifices he'd made to live authentically. Our connection felt electric yet tender, built on shared understanding. As we parted, he pulled me into a brief hug, and I lingered, the warmth chasing away the day's shadows. The internal conflict raged, less fiercely now. Liam wasn't just a stranger anymore. He was becoming the person who saw me completely, flaws and all, pushing me toward the growth I'd avoided for so long. Yet, deep down, I sensed bigger revelations loomed, ones that could test everything we'd built. The revelation hit like a freight train during what should have been a perfect evening. We planned a simple movie night at my place, popcorn and laughter filling the air as the film played. Midway through, Liam paused the screen, his expression shifting from relaxed to serious. "Alex, there's something I need to tell you. It's about how we really met." My stomach dropped as he explained. For 2 years, he'd been the anonymous mentor on the online forum I'd poured my heart into, the one where I'd anonymously detailed my struggles with identity, family pressure, and the fear of never being enough. He'd read every post, felt a connection through my words, and when life brought him to Chicago, he sought me out deliberately. The truck accident wasn't random. He'd recognized me from a vague description I'd once shared and positioned himself to help. Betrayal crashed over me in waves. "You knew everything about me before we even spoke?" I stood, pacing, anger and hurt mixing into a storm. Liam tried to explain, his voice cracking with regret. He'd fallen for the person behind the post long before meeting me, and the rescue was his way to bridge the gap without scaring me off. But it felt like manipulation, like every conversation had been built on a foundation of secrets. I demanded space, telling him to leave. The door closed behind him, and I sank onto the couch, tears burning as the unbelievable truth sank in. The stranger I'd fallen for passionately had known my deepest vulnerabilities all along. How could anything real come from that? The following days were a blur of isolation. Work suffered, deadlines slipping as I replayed every interaction, searching for lies. Mike noticed and listened as I vented, offering perspective but no easy answers. Family calls added salt to the wound. Mom's excitement about the reunion felt like another layer of pretense I couldn't maintain. Nights were the worst, lying awake questioning if the connection was genuine or just Liam's project. One evening, I stared at our old texts, the warmth now tainted. The internal crisis peaked. Was I angry at the lie or at myself for letting someone in so completely? The emotional fallout left me raw, forcing me to confront how deeply I'd come to rely on him. A week later, Liam texted asking to talk. No pressure. I agreed to meet at the same park bench where we'd first connected deeply. He arrived looking exhausted, eyes sincere as he explained further. The forum had started as curiosity, but my honesty had touched him profoundly, inspiring him to move and create a real chance. No agenda beyond genuine care, though he admitted the family business tie added complexity he'd withheld. His father's old company had once competed with my dad's, leading to financial strain on my family years ago. The double shock left me reeling, but his tears showed raw regret. We parted with no resolution, the air thick with unresolved pain. The growth I'd experienced felt shattered, yet a small voice whispered that maybe the feelings were real despite the secrets. The choice loomed, forgive or walk away forever. Reflection came in waves over the next month. I threw myself into work and long runs along the lake, trying to process the betrayal while missing Liam's steady presence more than I cared to admit. Mike became a sounding board, reminding me that people make mistakes, but growth comes from facing them. Family pressure mounted with reunion details, forcing me to confront how much I'd changed. A late-night call with my brother revealed his own hidden struggles, mirroring my internal battle and giving me unexpected empathy. Slowly, the anger softened into understanding. Liam hadn't lied out of malice. His actions stemmed from a connection that mirrored my own unspoken longing. I reached out first this time, suggesting coffee. Liam arrived early, nervous but hopeful, over steaming mugs. He laid everything bare. The forum posts had shown him a kindred spirit, and the family business history had made him hesitate to reveal too soon, fearing it would taint what was building. He'd sacrificed his own comfort, moving cities and risking rejection, all because the man behind the words had captured his heart. His vulnerability cracked my defenses. I shared how the secrets had amplified my fears of not being worthy, but also how he'd helped me see my strength. Tears flowed as we acknowledged the pain, but forgiveness began to take root. The unbelievable truth no longer defined us. It became part of our story. We took slow steps forward, rebuilding trust through honest talks and small gestures. A hike revisited our earlier adventure, this time with full transparency. Liam shared his sacrifices, including strained ties with his own family over past choices. I opened about the identity crisis that had nearly consumed me. The emotional intimacy deepened, turning the relationship into something stronger, forged in fire. Work improved as I confided in Mike more, gaining allies. Even family calls felt less burdensome. I hinted at personal changes without full disclosure yet. The awakening was profound. Love wasn't perfect, but facing the hard truths together brought growth neither of us expected. A turning point came during a quiet evening walk. Liam took my hand openly for the first time in public, and I didn't pull away. The simple act symbolized acceptance of myself and us. We discussed the future, the sacrifices we'd both make to protect what mattered. My internal conflict resolved into clarity. The initial lie didn't erase the genuine bond. It had led me to the person who saw me fully. As we sat by the lake, watching the sunset, the path ahead felt possible, even with challenges looming. The stranger had become my partner in every sense, and the unbelievable revelation had ultimately set us free to choose each other authentically. The family reunion arrived like a final test. I drove to the suburbs with Liam beside me, our hands linked for support. The house buzzed with relatives, laughter masking the tension. I felt introducing him as my close friend. Mom's warm hug turned questioning when she sensed the shift. Dad pulled me aside later, voice low about traditions and expectations. The confrontation escalated when old business stories surfaced, linking Liam's family to past hardships. Accusations flew, tears from Mom, disappointment from Dad. I stood my ground, explaining my journey, the identity I'd hidden, and how Liam had helped me embrace it. The room fell silent, the weight of years of pretense crashing down. Liam stayed calm, offering honest apologies for the past without excuses. My brother stepped in unexpectedly, sharing his own hidden struggles and advocating for understanding. The emotional climax stretched hours, filled with painful honesty and reluctant listening. Sacrifices were laid bare. My choice to prioritize authenticity over approval, Liam's willingness to face rejection for love. By night's end, no full resolution, but cracks of acceptance appeared. Mom hugged me tighter, whispering she'd try. Dad nodded gruffly. The first step? Driving back to Chicago, exhaustion mixed with pride. I'd faced the storm and emerged stronger. Life settled into a new rhythm. Liam and I built routines of shared mornings and evening walks, our bond unbreakable. Work promotions came as I brought my full self to projects. Friendships deepened with Mike's support. The growth was evident in small choices, attending a pride event together, planning future travels. Family calls grew warmer, tentative bridges forming. The journey from stranger to partner had transformed me, turning internal chaos into purpose. We laughed about the rainy day that started it all, grateful for the path, secrets, and all. Looking back, the unbelievable truth had been the catalyst for the life I was meant to live. True or false? A relationship that starts with a hidden truth can still be the most authentic love of your life.